Welcome to the How to Program with Java podcast, where all you need is the desire to learn, and you too can become a Java programmer with absolutely no knowledge of programming. And now, your host, Trevor Page.
Trevor Page. Hey guys, how you doing? As always, I will be your host for this episode, which is going to be number 47 of the How to Program with Java podcast. Always a pleasure to do these things. And you know, today's episode is going to be no exception. As with any other episode, we are going to learn a whole heck of a lot. At least I hope so. We're going to be continuing our journey that we've been on with regards to SQL, the structured querying language, all about databases. And today we're going to be talking about a topic called aggregate functions. Sounds like kind of a scary word, but it isn't. It's actually quite straightforward. And I actually, quickly doing the research and the sort of the brushing up before I recorded this episode, it literally took me 5 minutes to get everything together, to create, a table in my database and to write the scripts and, throw it all together and get it ready for you guys. So it's actually quite straightforward. We might even have time to dive into yet another topic, but I won't say anything yet. We'll see if we do have enough time. I always say it's not going to take too much time, and I end up spending almost an hour talking and rambling. So let's I guess dive right into the content for today. All right, so aggregate functions. What exactly is an aggregate function? Now I was going to go and look up a fancy definition that goes along with this term, but it lends itself best to being explained in the form of an example. Okay. So all it really is they call them a function. It's like a method, like you would execute a method in Java. It's just a function that you call to essentially get a value out of or from your data. Okay, so these are just helpful little things that you can run, helpful little commands that you can run to get some extra data out of your already existing data. So what I mean by that is, so some examples of the aggregate functions are running an average, so determining an average by calling one function, calling one method. You can figure out the average of entire table full of data very quickly. You can get a count, so you can count the number of rows in a particular table. Now, count we're going to leave for last because, like I said, we might be able to go even further and associate count with something else. But anyway, like I said, we'll see if we can get there. You can also find the max and the min. So you find the largest and smallest values, again, in a given table. And you can even return a sum, which is the sum total of some particular fields that you want to add up inside of a particular table. All right? So we have average, we have count, we have max, we have min, we have sum. There's even first and last, which returns which returns the first and last value in a table, but I don't really use those very often. Probably the ones I use the absolute most are count and sum. Those are probably two that I use the most, and I suppose it depends on your situation that you're in, as to how you use each one. But basically what I'm going to be talking about is these aggregate functions. And like I said, they're very straightforward to use. So probably the most confusing of them for now that I would talk about is to use the max and the min. And I mean, why would those be confusing? Well, it gets a little bit confusing if you're executing a max and a min on a non-numeric field. Then it gets a little bit wonky, but it's really not too difficult to understand. So max and min. It finds the maximum and minimum value of a particular table. So let's create a table. I'm going to create a table, and these examples are going to be inside of the How to Program with Java show notes, so you can go and get those at howtoprogramwithjava.com/session 47. You'll be able to see all these examples there, but I'll explain them to you over audio for now. So I'm going to create a table. I'm going to call it data points, just because, I'm not very creative, so I want to, create a table that's full of data points. So I'm just going to call it data points. What better name than that? So I'm going to create that table. So I'm going to say create table data points, or data underscore points. I'm going to open my round bracket. I'm going to give it two different columns. The first column is going to be the data points ID, because I want to give it a primary key. You should always have a primary key inside of your tables. So data underscore points underscore ID. I'm going to label it as an int. I'm going to give it the auto increment, and I'm going to set it as the primary key. Okay, all things that we've talked about before in past lessons. If you don't understand what I'm talking about, then you need to listen to probably 2 episodes back, as well as the last episode to understand that stuff. But anyway, moving forward, the next column is going to just be the data point itself, which I'm, in this case, just storing as an int. Okay, for now, I'm not going to get too crazy. I'll just have it, like I said, stored as an int. But you know what? I haven't done this in my example, but let me modify my example. Let me add a varchar data point as well. And I'll name that I'll give it the type of varchar, 20. Okay, so I changed things up. So it's not 2 columns, it's 3 columns. Data points ID, data point, and varchar data point. So, beautiful. Now I want to insert, data into my data points table. So I'm going to say insert into data underscore points. And I'm going to insert first the actual numerical data points, which I've given the column value or column title of data underscore point. And I'm going to say value 1. And I'm going to say again, and I'm going to terminate that and insert a new row. I'm going to say insert into data points value 2, insert into data points value 3, value 4, value 5, maybe all the way to value 8. Okay, so I'm going to just insert 8 different data points in ascending order from 1 to 8. Now, I could put in whatever values I want. This could have been, 100,000 and, 57 and 205, but I'm just being, nice and easy and simple and straightforward with putting in ascending values from 1 to 8. So there you go. So now also what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert in data points. So now I'm actually typing this out as I'm talking, whether or not you can hear the keystrokes or not, who knows. But I'm going to say insert into data points. I'm going to say varchar data point as well, because I want to be able to give not just numeric data, but also sort of string data, which they call varchars in SQL. So I'm going to say insert into data points, varchar data point, value, and I'm just going to put some names in there. I'm going to say Trevor. I'm going to say Bob. I'm going to say, Zoolander, because I was just thinking of that movie. Eric. Let's see, Christina. And, Vanessa. Those are the names that came to my head real quick. So now I'm just going to insert into the table all of those. Of course, my particular example is giving me an error, and I guess it's important to talk about these errors while they come up, because it's always good to learn from bugs and errors and mistakes that programmers make. So the error I just hit was it said unknown column varchar data point. Now that's odd. Why would there be an unknown column? Well, what happened was I already created the table with just 2 columns. Like I said, I just added a 3rd column as I was recording this episode. So although I added the 3rd column in the script, I didn't actually run to create the table with that particular 3rd data point. Okay? So my table has already been created with only 2, so of course it doesn't understand what the 3rd one is. So if I run this again to create the table, it's going to say, hey, the table already exists. You can't run this. Because I don't know what to do. The table already exists, so I can't overwrite it. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, I have one of 2 things I can do. I can either drop the table, which would be fine. I could say drop table data points, which would completely delete the table. And then fine, I could recreate it, but then I'd have to put in all my new data points again, even though, I wouldn't want to lose that data. So instead I'm going to do an alter, which is actually something I don't think we've talked about yet, which is interesting. I'm going to slide it into this episode like a ninja. I'm going to alter the table. So I'm going to say alter table, and I'm going to say data points, data underscore points, and I believe the command is add column. I'm going to say add column varchar data point. Okay, and I'm going to, just like when I was creating the table, you not only need to give the table or the column name, but you also have to give the column type. So I'm going to put add column varchar data point, and it's going to be a varchar 20. Now it's been a little while since I've run one of these types of commands before, but let me run this and see if it works, and see if we did it correctly. So there you go. It seems to have worked. Fantastic. So maybe I'll include this in the show notes as well. Go over sort of the flow of what I just went through, so you guys can follow along as well. So now I've altered the table, I've added a new column, so now that the column exists, now I can insert my data into the table given all the first names that I was talking about. So I'm going to insert all those first names, and there we go. So now it ran properly, and it has inserted all of my data points. So there we go. I now have a table. It's been created. It's got some data populated inside of it. Now I want to play around with it, right? I want to play around with these things, these aggregate functions, which I've been talking about, or we're going to be talking about throughout this episode. So what can I do? Well, I want to, let's start with the max. I want to say, I want to get the maximum value from the data points table, okay? So how do I do that? Well, it's actually just as easy as working everything into your existing select statements, okay? Everything comes back to select, more or less, in SQL. Select is very much the foundation for how to use a database. Because like I said, select is all about reading from the database. And that's essentially what we're doing. We are reading values from the database and then either just outputting, one of those particular values. Because in this case, we're outputting the max or the min. Or what we're going to do is we're going to select from it, read from the database, and do some additional processing on the data we get, and then output the final result, which is something like an average. Okay, when we do an average, we want to look through all of them, and then it's going to do it's going to do a sum, believe it or not. It's going to do an addition on all of them, and then it's going to divide it by the total number that it had to sum together, right? And that's how you calculate an average. So that's what it does behind the scenes when you run the average aggregate function. In any case, getting back to the max aggregate function, what we're going to do is to select the max. That's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to select max, which is just max, and we're going to open our round brackets, okay? We'll open our parentheses, and we're going to type in what particular column we want to use to select the max from, if that's a grammatically correct way to explain that. We are going to be selecting the max value from a list of values in a column, and we're going to supply that column name into the max aggregate function. Now that was just a really long, crazy way of explaining it, but really it all comes down to saying select max, and then I'm just going to say data point from data points. Simple as that. Data point, I believe it was called data point. Yes, so data point is the name of the column that I want to select from, that I want to find the max of. And that exists inside of the data points table. So it's almost like we're saying select data point from data points. But if we say select data point from data points, we're going to see a list of all of the data point values inside of the data points table. But we don't want to know that. We want to know the maximum data point. So all we do is we say select max, and then in brackets we say data point. All right. Now when I run that, boom, it returns 8, which makes sense because I inserted values 1 through 8. So therefore, it's gone through. It figures out, of all the values, which one is the biggest, and it outputs that biggest value for me. Okay. And it's not really that important that you understand how it works behind the scenes. That's really getting into the nitty-gritty of SQL, if you need to know that kind of level of stuff. And myself in my professional career, I never really needed to know that deep of a level of the functionality of the database. But that was just me. That was I probably could have gone further to understand more about how it works. And I'm sure if you are just strictly going the database route and are strictly learning databases as your full-time job, then you'll probably want to know how the max and the min and all these aggregate functions work and what their downsides are and their upsides and all that stuff. That's probably some information that you would need to know. But for our purposes, it's just good to know that they exist and that you can use them to further the application that you're building, right? So there you go. Select max, in brackets, data point, close bracket, from data points, which is the table name, done. Now, of course, conversely, we can use select min data point from data points. If I run that, then I get 1, which makes sense because that is the smallest value in the table. If I were to insert another value now, insert 0 and insert 10, and I ran the select max and min again, then it would reflect those new values. It would then return 0 for min and 10 for max. So the select, min, and max aggregate functions are only a snapshot. It's a snapshot of that particular table at that particular time. What is the maximum and or minimum value in that table at that particular time? All right, cool. So now, you can also run an average if you want. That's also another aggregate function that's quite simple and straightforward to understand. I think in MySQL, you can't type in select average. You type in select AVG, okay, which is a short form for average. If you type in select average as a word, it's going to say that this function doesn't exist, right? Unless you actually created it yourself. But that's some advanced stuff, creating functions all on your own. For now, if you say select AVG, and again, you put in brackets the data point that you want to get the average for, and you run that, and then it'll work. So you say select AVG, data point, from data points. Okay? All these, we're just swapping out that aggregate function name with whatever aggregate function we want to use. So when we say select AVG, it gives us the average, and sure enough, it returns 4.5, which is the average of the ascending values 1 to 8 all together. If you added those all together, divided it by 8, you would get 4.5. Cool. And finally, you can run sum, SUM, which is the summation, the addition of all of the data points together. So select sum data point from data points. Sure enough, you get 36, which is the sum of 1 to 8 ascending. All right, cool. So that, like I said, is fairly straightforward stuff. Now, where it starts to get a little bit more complex. Now, hold on, let me go back and check, make sure I hit every single one. AVG, max, min, sum, yes. Like I said, there's also first and last, but I never use those. So if I say select first, actually, funny enough, first doesn't even work inside of MySQL. So I wonder if that is a function that exists as part of SQL in general, and maybe MySQL has a different use case for that particular one. It perhaps does. It's probably a different, maybe a different abbreviation or something. I'm not sure. But in any case, like I said, I've never used it before, so it's not really that important to know. If you really desperately needed to know it, then all you need to do is Google it. You can find out whatever you want from Google in a matter of seconds. That's what I would recommend if you need to find, for some reason, the first and or last values in a particular database table. So now let's move on to count. Now, count, as I mentioned before, is a little bit special because it can be used. Well, I suppose I shouldn't say it. All these, I think, can be used in tandem with another keyword, which I'll get into, I guess, in a second, because we're only about 20 minutes in. And it makes it quite powerful. But for now, count, if we were to run the count aggregate function on our data points table, I could say select count, open bracket, data point from data points. So what do you think it's going to do here? What does the term count imply? Well, it implies that it's going to count the number of occurrences or something like that, which actually is exactly what it does. It's going to count the number of occurrences of a data point row. Okay, so if I say select count, what should it return? Well, if I say select count, it's going to return 8 because there are 8 different data points in the data points table, right? But if you were to run count, so you'd say select count, and then instead of saying data point, you put varchar data point. Okay, select count varchar data point from data points. Then what would you get? Well, you might not be able to guess the answer because I haven't really said it that much, but it was going to count the number of names that we have in the table itself. So if you remember, I put 6 different names in. I put Trevor, Bob, Zoolander, Eric, Christina, Vanessa. Okay, that's 6 different names. So if I run select count, now let me just do that and make sure that I'm not full of it. Yeah, there you go. Select count varchar data point from data points returns the number 6. So although there are 8 rows in my data points table, there are only 6 of them that contain the varchar or data inside of the varchar data point column. Okay, as opposed to the data points column, which contains 8 different rows. Okay, so that's kind of an interesting situation. Now, I said that, and I actually think I said something incorrectly there. Let me go back and just verify, because if I do select star now, I'm going to select star from data points, and I lied when I said there was only 8 rows. There's actually 14 rows, right? 8 plus 6. So I lied. There are 8 rows that have a data point value, and there are 6 rows that have a varchar data point value, which is a total of 14 rows. So when I was doing my select, select count, it only found 8 rows that contained a data point value, which is why it only returned the number 8. And when I said select count varchar data point, it returned 6 because there are only 6 rows that contain a value for varchar data point. Okay, so if I were to look at my table, I see that I have data points I have a data points ID, okay, the primary key of the table, 1 through 14, which makes sense because we have 14 rows, but the first 8 have a value for data point, but the first 8 have a null value for varchar data point, which makes sense because we did not assign one. And then for values, 9 through 14, we have nothing in the data point column. Okay, it's all null, which makes sense because we didn't insert a data point along with the names, which we put in as varchar data point. Okay, so it's kind of, I probably could have used better column names because I'm using the word data point everywhere here, so it might get a bit confusing. But again, that's where you want to go to the show notes page at howtoprogramwithjava.com/episode 47 to really understand what the heck is going on here. So it's very important. The whole point that I'm driving at here is it matters what you put inside of the brackets when you're saying select count and then you put that column name in there. That matters. What I haven't said is you can actually put star in there if you like. So if I say select count and then in brackets star from data points, what happens? Well, it's actually going to count everything. Okay, so if select count data point returned 8 and select count varchar data point returned 6, what do you think select count star should return? Okay, if star is saying everything, well, it returns everything. So therefore, you're counting everything. Therefore, it returns 14 as the result because there are 14 entries inside of that table. Cool? Makes sense? Hopefully. Hopefully I've done a decent enough job at explaining that. So now I'm just going to go through and make sure I keep my notes all up to date here so that you guys will be able to see and follow along with everything as I'm talking about it. Cool. So now the other thing that we need to talk about, so we've talked about max, min, average, sum, and count, and how each of those sort of works. But what I didn't talk about was, what if I do select max? Okay, we're looking for the maximum value. But remember, previously we were looking for select max data point. And I hinted that that was fairly straightforward because it's just doing a maximum for a data point value, which is a numeric value. But what if we are doing select max from varchar data point? Then what happens? Well, if I do that, it returns Zoolander. Okay, hopefully you can see what's going on there when I run select max. Let me also run select min on varchar data point and see what it returns. That returns Bob. So min returns Bob, max returns Zoolander. Okay, so hopefully there you see what's going on. Hopefully you see that what's happening is it is ordering alphabetically. Okay, because that's exactly what happens if you were to select all of the varchar data point values and you were to order the table in ascending order. Okay, and I say that, I'm not sure, we may have touched on the order keyword before, I'm not sure if we have, but I mean, all order does is it orders it either ascending or descending based on what you've selected. Okay, so if I say select varchar data point from data points, order by, what would I say? Order by varchar data point is what I want it to be ordered by, and then say, ascending, then I would order exactly. It would order it exactly as we asked for it. We want it to be ordered in ascending order by varchar data point for this particular table. I'm saying this out loud. I don't think I've talked about this, so this might be yet another thing that I am introducing to you as we're doing this on the fly. But again, ordering is very straightforward. Okay, ordering is exactly as it sounds. You can order in ascending or descending order, and it is as simple as it's either going to be numeric. So if it's a numeric field that you are ordering by, then it's going to order numerically. If it is a varchar value, it's going to order it alphabetically. Okay, where A comes first and Z or Z, however you want to pronounce it, comes last. Cool? So, the fact that that is the fact that that is the case, the order by case, that is how the min and max aggregate functions actually work. They use the order mechanism, which is already built into the database. The SQL language itself, or the database management system that you're using, already has an ordering mechanism. Okay? And the ordering mechanism works just like you would expect it to. Like I said, in ascending or descending order, by value or by alphabetical situation, however you want to explain it or say it. Okay? Cool. So that's a little bit of a curveball with respect to select min and max. And I think what I'll do is I'll put in some examples for ordering. So I'll put in some ordering examples so that you guys are aware of, or you see some syntax for how it works. So I can say select star from data points, and I can say order by, and I'll say data point, and I'll say ascending, which is just ASC. You actually don't have to spell it all out, which is kind of nice. And then I can say select star from data points, order by data point descending, which is DESC, short form for descending. Okay? So what's kind of interesting when you do it that way, when I order by data point, it puts the nulls first. Okay? Because it determines that null is of lower order than a actual number 1. So when I do it that way, when I say select star from data points, remember I'm selecting everything, and I'm saying order by data point in ascending order, all the data points that don't have values will come first because they don't have any values in there, and it deems null to be of smaller order than a number. So that's kind of an interesting thing to know. And therefore, if I sort in descending order, so the opposite scenario, then all the data points that actually have a value will show up at the top, and the highest one will be first. So 8 shows up, and then 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then null, 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 null. Cool? So, interesting to know. And now I can also run select star from data points, order by varchar data point in ascending and descending format, or order, however you like to discuss it or say it, or explain it. And the same rules apply here. If I order by varchar data point in ascending order, it perceives null as being of a lower ordering value than an actual varchar value. So you see all the nulls first, and then you see Bob, Christina, Eric, Trevor, Vanessa, Zoolander, which is in ascending order alphabetically. Fantastic. And of course, you do descending, and then it's the exact same thing, only flipped around. So you get Zoolander, Vanessa, Trevor, Eric, Christina, Bob, and then all the nulls. Cool? Excellent. So there you go. There's ordering. There's some aggregate functions all thrown at you in under 30 minutes. But I do want to talk about one more thing, which is, I'm trying to think, should I throw this at you now, or should I spread this out into another episode? Yeah, you know what? I'd rather just spread this out into another episode just because I've already, thrown a fair bit at you. Although it's more or less pretty straightforward, it's still good to, be taught something, one thing at a time. In this case, I think I did 2 or 3 all in one session. So I think that's enough. That's enough for today. Let's call it an episode. We will. I'll have all of those notes up on the show notes page at howtoprogramwithjava.com/session 47. You can go there. You can see the script, the code examples that I've typed in as we were doing the show, and you'll see everything explained there in full. So hopefully that you'll be able to walk away from it with no issues whatsoever. Cool. All right, so In closing, like I said, the next episode we will go on to another topic, which kind of goes hand in hand with some of the aggregate functions, and is something that it actually does get a bit confusing in concept once it takes a while to really get used to this particular topic, like I said, which is why I'm going to leave it to the next episode. But we'll touch on that when we get there. In the meantime, by all means, go to howtoprogramwithjava.com, because, like I said, I'm doing weekly or bi-weekly tutorial sessions, workshops, live online workshops that you can attend. All you need to do is you go to the blog. You'll see at the very top of the blog, you'll see a little bar there where it'll say click here. You can click there and you'll be able to sign up for the next live online tutorial session. So that'll be really fun. I've had a lot of, like I said, positive feedback from these particular workshops. People really enjoy them. Plus, I have a little bit of a surprise in each one for all of the attendees who actually get on there and get live and get interactive with me during the workshop. So you'll actually be able to get in and hop in a chat room and actually chat with me one-on-one, which is really nice. So by all means, hop on in there, go to howtoprogramwithjava.com, and you'll see at the very top, you click on the bar, click on the little button that says click here, and sign up for the next workshop, because like I said, it'll be fun. Cool. All right, ladies and gentlemen, always a pleasure, and can't wait to see you in the next episode, which will be episode number 48. We'll be closing in on number 50. I can taste it already. I'm very excited for number 50. But until then, I wish you the very best day and or night you can have. I wish you happy learning, and I say bye for now. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the How to Program with Java podcast. Please visit howtoprogramwithjava.com for more useful Java tutorials.